In this video, we'll be going over IRS Notice CP2057. This is a notice you might receive from the IRS if they think you might need to amend your tax return. So we'll go through the notice. We'll talk about what this notice points out, some things that you can do if you receive this notice, and then some resources that you can turn to. But first, let's take a look at a couple of the fields at the top of the notice. So in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see the notice number. There's a field for the tax year, the notice date, your social security number, and a contact phone number. The notice date's probably the most important piece of information here, simply because if there's anything that the IRS expects you to do, there might be a timeline attached to it. So it's important that you pay attention to the notice date and give yourself plenty of time to respond adequately to the notice. On the left-hand side, this redacted area is the space for your name and address. So you'll want to make sure that that's correct. You'll also want to make sure that it's up to date. So if you've recently relocated, normally the IRS will update your tax record with the information that you put on your most recent tax return if it's different from previous tax returns. However, if you're in the middle or if you're in between tax seasons and you're not going to file your tax return for a while, you might want to go ahead and update your tax record either by calling the IRS, going through the phone tree and validating your information. You can change your address over the phone that way, or you can file the IRS official change of address form. For most individuals, that would be IRS form 8822. For business owners, that would be IRS form 8822B. And we'll put links in the show notes to resources that we've created about any forms and schedules mentioned in this video. So let's take a closer look at this notice. So there's a lot of redacted fields here, but we can kind of walk through them and infer what the IRS is telling us here to do. So obviously the information about a tax return, that depends on your year. So, this notice date goes to 2014. Let's just pretend that this is an amended Form 1040. Since it's alluding to a Form 1040X, that's probably a reasonable assumption here. The income and payment information that we have on file from sources such as employers or financial institutions does not match the information that you reported on your tax return. So if you agree with the information that the other sources reported, then you would complete an amended tax return and you would file it with the same IRS location as you filed your original tax return. Conversely, if you don't need to respond, if you don't agree with that information, then you don't need to respond to the notice. So if you think that your return is correct and that they made a mistake, you'll need to contact them and ask them to correct their records accordingly. So if you don't file an amended return and you don't ask the other sources to correct their records, then those errors will probably remain in your file and you might have similar reporting problems next year. So in this notice, there's not really any indication of a timeline or a due date, so that's good. In the back of it, you should see some sort of information that breaks down the differences between what you reported and what the other sources reported. So, for example, interest income received from, let's call it Bank of America. It would be the address, the account information, and then reported to the IRS by others. So you would then have to take a look at your tax return compared to what the others reported and then determine whether or not you need to file an amended tax return to correct that information. You can talk to your tax professional if you wish. Generally speaking, tax professionals will probably charge anywhere between, call it $150 and maybe $300 to $400 for an amended tax return. So if there's a significant difference in what was reported, it might be worthwhile. If for some reason there's only, $10 or $20 worth of difference, then you kind of have to use your judgment. You can always defer to your tax professional's guidance. If the IRS is really heartbroken about it, they'll probably send you a different type of notice telling you that they calculated your taxes differently, and they'll give you a bill for what you might owe. But in this notice, it doesn't look like they're doing that or going to do that. So we'll take a look at this IRS webpage to see if there's any additional information here. So it basically just says you can order a tax transcript of your tax return. You can order an amended tax return. And then there's frequently asked questions. So, for example, the information's wrong because someone else is using my name and social security number. That might be an identity theft issue. So there are identity theft resources. There's what's known as an identity theft affidavit, which you can file with the IRS. You can also use that as an opportunity to request a identity protection PIN that will allow only the taxpayer to file their tax return using a specific code that the IRS sends them every year. And this kind of helps cut down on the amount of identity theft that people will commit when it comes to tax returns. One of the most common schemes out there is someone will grab a taxpayer's identity, say their name and social security number, and then they'll file a tax return in their name early in the year before most people actually file. And what they'll do is they'll work the tax return so that all the deductions are, that are fraudulent to begin with. They maximize the deductions. They try to minimize the income so that they get the biggest possible refund. And then they'll have it diverted to a bank account that they control. And then they'll sweep that account. The money's gone. And by the time you file your tax return, then the IRS kicks it back because someone else already filed. So the identity theft resources are pretty important. So we'll put links in the show notes to some of the identity theft resources that might be of use to you, as well as links to resources about how to request either transcripts of your tax return as well as actual copies of your tax return on IRS Form 4506. So it doesn't look like that there's anything that you need to do right away. There doesn't look like there's any timeline on this notice. So just kind of be mindful that your decision, if you have a tax professional, you should probably consult with them on that just to see what you should do. So that's all we have for this notice. As I mentioned, we'll put links to articles and videos we've created about some of the forms and schedules here. So if you like our articles, please subscribe to our newsletter. If you like our YouTube videos, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. And as always, if you have any questions or comments, or if there's a question that you'd like to see covered in an upcoming video, please hit me up in the comments section. Thank you very much and have a great day.